Here with attorney Margo Grubbs. She was a police officer for 5 years and is a 1980 graduate of Chase College of Law, also holding a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from NKU. Margo practices family law, domestic partnership and same-sex partnership law, criminal law, personal injury, wrongful death, civil litigation, and is also a certified family and general mediator. She's a current member of the DEI Committee of the Kentucky Bar Association and is a former member of the Board of Governors. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is to learn more about your experience with the psychology of social media and the impact it has on young adults in society. It seems we are more and more disconnected from those sitting in the same room. Instead of speaking to each other from 3 feet away, we text each other. Can you explain that, and how has that impacted your law firm when it comes to handling cases involving divorce, family law, or even wrongful death?
Well, I believe over the last 45 years of my practice that the changes that I've seen in basic people's interactive communication is drastically impaired and reduced by the devices that we all use. There was a day where even in courtrooms, more talking occurred than now. Even in a trial, you're going to see more introduction of text messages and emails and that type of thing to show motivation for a particular set of circumstances that you might be litigating. So there's been an enormous impact. And then social media has also developed into a piece of evidence that can be used in almost any type of litigation there is, but more practically speaking, it would be family law and custody matters, because Kentucky is a no-fault divorce law state. So it's nobody's fault, supposedly, that you're getting divorced. So the court doesn't, consider that information for why someone should get a divorce or not. It will go more to the motivations behind certain activities when it comes to custody of the children and the postings people make on social media. And then, of course, if you're in a personal injury action, which I do a lot of plaintiffs' work, the plaintiff's Facebook page can be used favorably as well as disfavorably for evidentiary purposes, for lifetime quality of life activities and all that type of thing. So there's been a huge impact. Well, how long have we had these things now? 06, 05, something like that. I think I had my first BlackBerry.
Right. And one of the things that you mentioned, social media being used as evidence, what I have seen and what I've read is now we have the issue of, the 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old at school, using their cell phone or their Facebook page, and they're doing these challenges which lead to them being charged with a crime. And we even get this situation where students are, they're sharing explicit photos of their friends, which is also a crime because these are children, these are minors. Have you witnessed that?
Oh, absolutely. I've in my career, I've done a lot of criminal defense work, including sexual abuse cases. Actually, I was on the first Northern Kentucky rape crisis task force back in the day, before we even had the development of how procedures and policies should work on investigating sexual offenses. So yes, I've been involved in those kinds of matters, not only on the text, it's called sexting is what it is. It's, people who are sending, sexually explicit material back and forth on these devices, but also kids who have gotten caught up in this challenge. In reference, I think out in Boone County, there was a challenge to tear down sinks and paper towel holders and things like that within school confines themselves. And, these kids ended up getting, charged with criminal offenses. Now, albeit when you're a minor, if you behave and you are criminally convicted, so to speak, or found responsible as a juvenile, your record can be sealed at 18. So there is a benefit to that unless you're treated as an adult. I have not seen one where a person has been treated as an adult most recently, but rape would classify, a 15-year-old supposedly getting charged as an adult. So, yes, I think that we are not understanding that these devices have good intentions for us as a human race, but it's turned out to be a lot of negativity that is affecting conduct and behavior. And my personal take on the whole thing with school is there's no reason for a child to have a phone in school at all. They should be collected at the beginning of school and they should be returned at the end of school. And I don't know why that's not happening, but it'd be a good question for the school board because there's no need to have that interruption. And I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not, William, that if you are literally thinking about your phone and what's on your phone, you can be driving in your car, which you're not supposed to look at your phone, but you'll be down the road and go, how did I get here? It's nuts. So people are just getting addicted to these things. And then that goes to the big question isn't this all part of the process of mind control that is being set upon us as humankind? It's a pretty sad state of affairs, if you ask me.
Well, you mentioned that, and I look at, sometimes you'll say, man, I'd really like a cup of coffee. And 2 minutes later, there are 14 million coffee advertisements on your social media feed.
Yeah, that algorithm drives you crazy.
But to further that question, when we lead into the next topic about the increased rate of student suicide within the Boone County School District, we've learned there have been 7 in the past year, 4 of those since November. Just a very sad subject, but there are 0 statistics available. We've heard from police chief in Florence. We've heard from the sheriff's office, who were very forthcoming with information. The coroner forwarded our questions to the task force spokesperson, but there are 0 statistics when it comes to the breakdown of how many of these suicides were due to ingesting a substance or how many were physical harm. And then we learned through the spokesperson via the coroner's office that Boone County itself has seen 24 suicides in the year 2024. How are we this far into a crisis? Yet I have 2 different officials telling me we have no statistics, we have no breakdown, we have no trend. How did we get here?
Well, I think that the question begs the answer in that you're bringing now to light some information that the majority of people do not look into. And generally speaking, when you're looking for statistics on that kind of a topic, you look to your sheriff's office and ask them specifically, can we develop those statistics? Because, as you well know, things are form-driven when it comes to management of really anybody's work. So what is the information that should be gathered at the time of the incident and then formulated into a format that can give you some statistical answers? And I've always found that the Boone County Sheriff's Office has been very open to looking into those matters if it's put in that kind of a context. And then you could bring to the table the fact that you, as well as many other people, are interested in knowing. It's a sad state of affairs that we are seeing the fact that suicide is the answer to what is an underlying psychological or emotional problem that is generally situational and as teenagers, situational that is fleeting, to be quite frank, as easy for older people to look back in their parts of their life and see that whatever the situation was, you have the ability to overcome it. Unfortunately, when the dependency upon immediate gratification comes from these media platforms that we have, and people also are bullying other people. But of course, from my perspective, we have a bully in the White House at this point who seems to think that we as the American population are not getting the understanding that we are now seeing, particularly after last Friday's incident with President Zelensky. So I think it's a big picture issue. I think by focusing in the county and in our early, our Northern Kentucky region, you should be able to develop that. Usually, from what I can gather, the suicides have been hanging. If you can imagine that, more hanging than ingestion of a substance. I don't know about gun. I haven't seen anything with a gun recently, but who in the world would think about hanging themselves? It's such a tragedy. But for instance, the Kentucky Bar Association has an actual Kentucky Lawyers Help program for lawyers in crisis, and it's something that has developed as issues have come about, from alcoholism to drug usage, even to mental health issues. And we've had a number of suicides in our bar membership, which has been tragic. So if you take it from a micro level on your Board of Education and your local public offices, including the coroner's office, they should be able to develop that information and give you statistics about it, because it's important for people to know. But 24 people, that's 2 a month in the year of 2024. I grew up in a funeral home family. I don't recall very many of the deaths and the burials that we had over time were suicides back in the day. So there seems to be some sort of onus as to why people are that desperate for resolution of whatever that situational conflict or problem is to take away their life. Although I will say this, William, and I've said this for a number of years, the computer games that kids grow up with, and now you see 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds with their iPads, the animated character is killed, but then he gets right back up and he goes again in the next game. Unfortunately, life does not work that way, and I think there is a big missing piece on the connection of understanding that death is final.
Right, and it goes back to that psychological piece, the impact these devices and games are having on what young people consider reality and what the possibilities are. But looking at that number, 24 suicides, 7 of them being students. Then you look at, there was 1 attempted suicide on top of that Florence responded to at a school. Add to our privately sourced information that says there was 7 attempts in one department of one school. Does it shock you that it took one parent to stand up publicly to bring most of this information to light? Does it shock you that nobody was talking about the problem until this one parent stood up?
Yeah, that's shocking, because I think that what most of us have learned over the course of our lifetime is the more vocal we are in our presentation of whatever issue it is that we are concerned with will bring more light to the subject matter. And I think that my activism over the course of my life allowed me to be involved in not only just politics, but community activism, issue-oriented activism, to bring attention to a problem. But people seem to put their feelings out there on Facebook, but then they don't want to stand up personally. And yes, I had recently saw where there was like a outpouring. I believe it was a Florence Baptist church over with 2 mothers who had lost their children, and they brought it to the attention. So right now, things are ripe for the discussion, and how you bring politicians to the table is you put it out there for them to be aware of it. And then I always believe that evidence-based information cannot be challenged by lies. Evidence-based information, eyewitness, photographs, words, videos. And yes, we see a lot of people trying to divert that which is a observation or a video or an email or a text and say it didn't happen that way. But the But the more people that come to the forefront and say, I witnessed it, this is what happened. But I don't know how the media is going to help bring it unless they say the truth. Because the truth is all we have in life. You have truth and you have deception. And I refuse to live in a life full of deception.
Well, you look at the news reports, and some news channels are saying there have been 7 suicides. Some are saying there have been 4. You look at the fact that this task force has been created. There's already been one meeting. I have the questions. When will the public be invited to these meetings? And I think the most important question, when are we going to bring in the students? The politicians can talk all they want. They're politicians. I think the most important voice in the entire conversation is that of the student themselves.
Well, I agree with you. I think that you have to have the far-reaching feedback from every group that is involved. And these kids who are losing their friends to the suicide can now potentially speak as to what their official understanding was at the time when they were interacting with whoever the child was that took their life. But they should be, our school system has got to talk about this bullying and not slough it off as it doesn't mean anything, because bullies never do it the right way if you really start focusing on their behavior and conduct. And it can change because the only constant of life is change. But you've got to have a group willing to bring it to the attention of others. Now, I didn't know that there was a task force in place, but I have in my past been involved in a task force for domestic violence before it was even law in Kentucky. So it's a step in the right direction, but how do you manifest it? You get the word out. You take out the information to the community groups on Facebook. And now Instagram seems to be the big other thing that a lot of the people are moving from Facebook to Instagram. And then I don't know anything about TikTok. But you
right,
could,
I tend to shy away from
have that
myself.
thing. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Again, with the information we're getting, if a parent can prove via evidence, as you mentioned, whether that be email, text message, or video documentation, that their child was bullied and it was reported multiple times and it led to the suicide of their child, obviously we're looking at a possible wrongful death suit in that situation. Am I correct?
Well, sure. Any time that you have a wrong between individuals, that's covered by the civil law. That would be a tort, it's called. So wrongful death would be a tort. And in order to prove, though, that actually someone or some organization was liable, you'd have to show that they were responsible with a duty of care to prevent it, interrupt it, stop it, and you have to prove that there was evidence that they did not stop it. And that is gathered through a good investigation. There's nothing other to help legal matters than investigations of witness interviews and looking at the documentation. And anything that has been removed from the Facebook can be found. It's not gone forever. If it's out there, there's a digital footprint. So I think that you have to potentially put together, and then there's expertise, professionals who are experts in the field of whatever, of that type of psychological harm that is caused by bullying or failing to intercede of the bullying and that type of thing. So you would have not only potentially the failure to supervise the child that was doing the bullying in reference to parental liability, but also potentially school and or other organization that allowed it to persist to the point that a child took their life. So yes, it could be a potential wrongful death action.
Again, we're here talking with attorney Margo Grubbs. When we look at elected leaders nationally, we look at the president, of course. Locally, we look at state representatives like Savannah Maddox and T.J. Roberts. We see their legislation attempting to honor the president with a possible highway being named after him. Their legislation that would allow guns in schools, that would allow 18-year-olds to carry concealed weapons. We don't see legislation that would make the schools safer. We don't see legislation that would make our communities safer. Can you give us your view on what I'm referring to as an epidemic of stupidity?
Well, I actually agree with you. I think that one of the things that we have to do is turn the tide on the hate-filled rhetoric that we are all living under now, because we have forgot our humanity to humanity. And I am a faith-based person myself. I was raised in right there in Florence Christian Church, and when I was a little girl, lived right next to the church. And I believe that, our Jesus teachings are critical to development of our base of values in life. And if you believe even in more of a spiritual finding, we are here for a reason, and that is to be in service to our higher being and others. Other than that, there is no other reason. Think about it. Why are we here? To be in service to our higher being and others. So anything that interferes with that service is wrong thinking. And unfortunately, I call it evil thinking, because we are in a good and evil battle of epic proportions right now. And I would never have thought, and I'm 72 years old now, that I would ever have seen the day when we think it was a good thing for an 18-year-old to have a gun in school, or even any guns in school. I don't know if you remember that young man who shot his family that morning and went to school out at Ryle. What was his name? Clay something.
It starts with an S. I
Yeah.
can't remember his name, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
But that was a Shroud. That day, Boone County, us Boone Countians, that's both sides of my family go back to the late 1700s. We were in shock that could have potentially happened in our county. And now we just had that happen in the fall with the shooting down there in Union. I mean, this is insanity. And why would we name Burlington Pike after a person that almost 50% of the population did not vote for? I mean, it's out of control. It's totally out of control. And the only way we're going to get it in control is if community groups get together and come together and question the politicians who are trying to do those things that just make no sense, that they're low prioritizing humankind and high prioritizing powerful power.
Do you feel that we've now reached a point where it's not about who's correct, it's not about the evidence, it's more about who can speak the loudest and who can gather more people in their corner to make you think that you're correct?
There is some significance to what you just said about gathering the people as to what's correct. I'll give you a prime example. We had a festival for the LGBT community at the Union Presbyterian Church parking lot.
Correct, I remember.
And I was there helping my Democratic candidate that day. Just happened to be there. So there were political booths, there were food booths. It was just an outpouring of kind, caring people at the Union Presbyterian Church. And all of a sudden we looked up, and there on the sidewalk, in an intimidating fashion, was a group of single filing men walking up the street carrying a flag of some Christian orientation, and they were basically intimidating by their presence. No women. There were no women in that group. And one of the local county commissioners was right there in that group of men intimidating the LGBTQ community. and the churchgoers that were there supporting them.
Right, that would be the head of our Republican Party in Boone County Commissioner Chet Hand, and I saw the videos and I saw the photographs, and that kind of leads me into our next topic. Is I was going to ask you, in your view, what is the largest social change we've seen decade over decade when it comes to the treatment of those who don't share our same faith? And what I mean by that is national and local politicians. It seems to me you have to follow either the Catholic faith or Christian/Baptist faith to get your votes. And sometimes, even though I'm also a Baptist individual, elected leaders hold so tightly to protecting that religion that they end up degrading other religions when they do that. Why is that so prevalent, and why do these people feel the need to? I mean, they were intimidating you on church grounds. Does that make sense to you?
Well, no, they actually stayed on the sidewalk, so they were on a public sidewalk.
You were on church grounds. The group was
yes,
on
I was
church grounds, but their presence was there, and they made their presence well known. Why is their religion any better than yours?
Well, and see, that kind of goes back to the whole philosophy of our country. For over 250 years, we came to America as immigrants to escape the puritanical beliefs of England and the overwhelming furor of the kings and the monarchs on a religious-based proposition. So we came here for religious freedom. And over that time of 250 years, we have developed into a nation that is diverse. So when you said DEI, let's look at those words. Diversity. Our population is diverse and is now, as of 2021, less Caucasian than it's ever been. Equity. That means fairness under the law. What is fair? And inclusion means everyone is included, not the philosophy of exclusion. So when you talk about the diversity, equity, and inclusion as a framework, it promotes fair treatment. Our nation has developed over time, though, the systemic failure of including those that are different than us, i.e., white people primarily. And over time, it's just been a us and them. And now it has promulgated to such degree of hatred. You ask, why is it religious? Because at service on Sunday, you have the largest group of like-minded individuals and like-minded individuals than you have during your week. They're all in one place.
I completely agree with that. And I have said for years, religion has been hijacked by politicians looking to further their own needs.
And more particularly in the United States than anywhere else, because the United States has always been a broad-based acceptance of humankind. I mean, you don't have to go probably far out of your neighborhood to find someone that's parent or grandparent was a first-generation American, because they came from Ireland and Germany and Italy and Spain and Mexico. I mean, and so now we have this. Can you even imagine a vessel filled of white men with a bottom deck of human beings stacked side by side for 2 months, crossing an ocean? I can't even imagine it, but we did that to another human being. So we've come a long way, but right now we've got a twist and knot in our philosophy of this country, and we are on a precipice, and it's frightening. It's frightening to me, and I'm an old woman, but I'm not going to give up my activism, and I am not going to give up calling it out. It is wrong. It is racist. It is not fair, and it is not what we are meant to be on this earth for.
Well, I think it just goes again, back to that point that we are so far removed from what the truth is, what reality is, that now our truth is whatever we want it to be. And if we have 2 or 3 people that will agree with us, well, forget it. You're not going to change your mind at this point. And one of the things that I enjoy doing this back and forth with you and other guests is, there's no money involved. There's no sponsorship. It's not my opinion versus your opinion. It's I want to hear your opinion. I want to be educated. I want to be informed. And we agree on many things. And I think we may have a slight disagreement, not completely, when it comes to the president and his very interesting Oval Office meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky last week. It was shocking in a sense, but it's Donald Trump, so really nothing about him shocks me at this point. What did you see? What did that incident make you feel?
Well, it really disappointed me as a country because, number one, as professionals, we know that these matters are not taken lightly before they're publicized on a TV. There is a meeting of the minds of the participants, and generally speaking, it's a photo op. You got a couple handshakes, a couple of statements, and then the press pool is taken out, and that's it. It's a done deal. This one went on, and it was done in such a way that it was degrading to this man who has literally been on the front lines watching his fellow countrymen die, having seen 2 little old ladies who were just having tea in their kitchen apartment being bombed to death. We see this man who has picked up stones that had blood on them. I mean, this is a man who's been engaged. And then we have, the president who has somebody serve him his Coke. This is like not people on the same playing field. And so I thought it was a setup. I thought it was particularly J.D. Vance asking questions that I remember Zelensky standing before the Congress and saying, thank you, America. I want to thank you, American people. He has said thank you so many times. So many times. Why in the world would you pick something like that and say you haven't even thanked us? Because that was not even the truth.
No, it wasn't true at all. And I looked at the video when he left the White House, and I mean, he might as well have been running full trot. He was ready to get out of there. One of the things that I do question, they're looking at his past. Oh, he was a progressive before he became president. If we're going to judge Zelensky's past, then we have to judge Trump's past, and nobody really wants to do that in the Republican Party. But can you objectively say that incident was wrong? It was offensive to Ukrainians. It should be offensive to Americans, and still, at the same time, question where all of the aid and the money has went. And I think the big problem with that is a large portion of Americans are thinking it's just cash. And it's not. It's equipment. It's military supplies.
Oh my gosh!
Food.
Well, then you know where it's gone. The equipment cost it's gone to the defense contractors making it.
Some of that being in the United States.
And paying for the inventory. So the money has literally gone right back into the pockets of the rich and famous who own the defense industry. That's where a lot of the money is gone.
Americans,
and then corruption. Yeah, I mean, corruption. There's corruption everywhere. But the question is, has some of the food and cost been sold on the black market in Ukraine? Well, I would say probably yes. And that if you did an investigation per dollar, you'd find out what was going on. But you can't use those kinds of blanket statements to say that where's the money gone when we know you take one look at the rubble left. All you have to do is look at the rubble. That I forget what the name of the one country is down on the port. I mean, it's literally nothing but rubble.
We're talking about Gaza.
Oh, no.
This is with Ukraine.
No, I'm in Ukraine. There's one whole port that is completely rubble. Yeah, I mean, it looks very similar to Gaza.
You look at these images and you question how anybody could survive it.
Well, I think that's where we say to ourselves, how blessed are we to be here in the United States of America, because we've not ever seen that in our lifetime other than 9/11.
Do you think we will get back to that point? Is there a way for us to come back to the closeness, the united front we had on September 12th? Is that possible without a 9/11 type event, God forbid?
I don't know the answer to that. I always have great hope. I'm a very optimistic person, but I don't know when. I think there'll have to be some sort of ugly event before we gather again.
Vladimir Putin.
I don't know.
Let's for just
he's
1
an evil
minute.
man. Evil beyond.
Right. Do you think there's any truth to the speculation or the commentary that Trump is somehow involved with the Russian government? I mean, there's no way to really know these things, but there's a lot of talk about it.
Yeah, if you look at his history, there were connections in, I believe, the 90s, where there's photographs of him in Russia. And him being the businessman and wanting his name on high-rise hotels, it wouldn't surprise me at all that he went over there to strike a deal to get a Trump hotel in Russia. But what happened from that point forward, the Steele dossier had some significant information in it. And where there is, I'm always, as a lawyer, going, where there's smoke, there's got to be some fire. So who knows what the real truth is? But to be quite frank, it's like the Epstein files. His name is permeated in the Epstein files, phone numbers, airplane logs. I mean, so it's like you can't just say things didn't exist because it's right there in writing. So, videos and him in writing, who knows what they have on him. But generally speaking, and the funny thing is Putin and I were born the same year, 1952. And I think that he is an exploiter from the way, way back. So it would not surprise me at all that they have something on him.
Here talking with attorney Margo Grubbs. 2 questions left for you in this great conversation here. Let's talk about Gaza as a place for the people of the world.
Gaza should not have happened. I feel so bad that we as a country participated in providing the weaponry, but I know that there's this strange alliance between the United States and Israel, but you don't bomb it to non-existence and just not care about those children and families and people, because when it comes down to it, we all are family people. We want to take care of our families. And it's sad that the terrorist groups built their bunkers under schools and hospitals. And so what do you do? But I think diplomacy can work. I have great hope that it can work, but bombing that, it's a 2-state solution. It's always been a 2-state solution, and everybody knows it's always been a 2-state solution. So,
I've always felt that the issue between Israel and Palestine was driven by politics and nothing more. What happened in the past, 13-year-olds today are only impacted by that because of politicians and elected leaders who are still fighting that war, that mentality. So now we have all of these younger generations suffering, from the crimes of the past. And I look at that, if one hotel goes up in Gaza with Trump's name on it, this will not have been for diplomacy. This will not have been for the rights of Palestinians. This will be for the right of Trump.
Oh, absolutely. And all you have to do is look at the seashore and see that's what it was all about in the first place.
want to end on a local topic here, kind of going back to what we spoke about before, current pending legislation in Kentucky, which would allow guns in Kentucky schools. It's mind-blowing to me as somebody who, in high school in Boone County, can recall specifically 2 events where weapons were removed from the school while we as students were there. One of them, I physically saw in the evidence box. It was a fully loaded 9mm. God forbid, should this law pass, and should a school shooting occur in Kentucky, will these state representatives take responsibility? Will the Commonwealth take responsibility? Who or what entity gets the lawsuit at that point? If this becomes law and more children die because these guns were allowed in public schools.
Well, when it comes to any kind of action against a legislator, they have a qualified immunity issue they can argue, meaning they're not going to be held responsible. The school also tends to have some sort of quasi-governmental immunity. That'll be argued. In our system, which is adversarial in nature, there may be some sort of attack of the legislation if it passes as not being constitutional, but you're talking about hoops that have to be gone through in order to finally prove liability other than the personal liability of the student that pulled the trigger. And then that's criminal in nature versus civil. So there is not a black and white answer to that. All we can do is call our legislators and let them know under no circumstances will we reelect them if they are going to vote to allow guns in schools. That is like insanity waiting to happen.
Well, the sad thing is we probably will reelect them, unfortunately. I have greatly enjoyed this conversation, definitely enjoyed your depth of knowledge on many topics. If a citizen wants to reach out to you, maybe requiring your assistance in some topic of law, how could they reach you?
All they have to do is call me and look on the Google. All they have to do is Google me. I come up.
All right. I greatly appreciate your time and hope to do it again.
Oh, I do too. Thank you so much, William. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Good job. Thank you.